Hello, and welcome to another episode of Reading Reddit with Amber. Here's another batch of outrageous stories from r/Am I the Jerk. Shout out to the people who sent in suggestions for today's video. Also, if you want to see more of me reading Reddit, Brian of Brian's Advice is hosting me on his channel on Thursdays. By the time you see this, there should already be a couple of videos featuring me and my takes up there. His format is pretty similar to mine, so if you like my content, you should definitely check him out and consider subscribing to his channel. I'll include a link in the description box below. Our first story today is, Am I the jerk for asking my son's girlfriend to wear a pad to bed? A few weeks ago, my son, who's 26, and his girlfriend, who's 23, stayed the night at our house. They had a day's gap between apartment leases, and we were happy to have them stay in our guest bedroom. They've been together for 5 years, and she's normally very sweet, so this was surprising. At bedtime, I used the bathroom and saw a tampon wrapper in the trash. My daughters are all out of the house, and my wife has exited that stage of her life, so I knew it must have been my son's girlfriend. Normally, I wouldn't care what kind of feminine products she uses. The thing is, the bed they were about to sleep on had brand new silk sheets that I didn't want to be stained should she leak in the middle of the night. I knocked on the door and explained the situation, and I asked her if she was also wearing a pad. She said no. I asked her to please wear one in addition to the tampon to ensure no leaking, etc. I even found an old box of pads in our basement bathroom for her. She still refused, saying she wouldn't stain the sheets. I told her to either put a pad on or put a few towels down, and my son told me I was being rude. She ended up taking a pad into the bathroom with her. The wrapper was there when she left the bathroom, but I didn't see the pad in the trash the next morning, so my guess is she didn't even use it. The sheets were fine though, so I didn't want to pursue it. I told my wife what happened, and she thinks I was being too pushy. She wants me to apologize. My son also called me to say his girlfriend cried because she was embarrassed. I didn't mean to upset her, but I do not think it's rude to ensure my brand new silk sheets stay nice. Even if she didn't want to wear a pad, she should have put towels down. I am baffled by her behavior and would appreciate an apology of my own. Now there are a lot of edits to this one, and we're not going to read through all of them because there's a lot of them and they're long. But essentially it takes a while for this guy to realize why he's the jerk, so if you want to see that train of thought, you can go to the original post, which I've linked to below. What did I just read? OP, you're the jerk big time. That was a huge invasion of privacy, and also really infantilizing, because you're basically insinuating that she can't be trusted to know whether her period is heavy enough to warrant a pad. Let me assure you, your son's girlfriend has no intention of bleeding onto your new sheets. Bleeding through at someone else's house is mortifying, and most of us will do what we can to avoid that. But here's the thing. She knows a lot more about her body and her cycle than you do. Some people have really light periods or lighter days during their periods and don't need a lot of protection. You're lucky that she and your son didn't just leave and never talk to you again, because that's what I would have wanted to do had I been in her shoes. Our next story is, Am I the jerk for offending someone who assumed I was trans? I'm a 25-year-old female, and I recently started a new job. During the whole application and interview process, I communicated with the same person, the office manager Susan. We had a couple of messages on email, and she conducted my Zoom interview. I got my job offer a couple of weeks ago, and have even been working from home for the company ever since. At the end of last week, I had an email arrive from someone representing the company's LGBTQ group. This was a national group representing my company. I work for them in a regional capacity, saying that I had a standing invitation to join them in their next Zoom chat, if only to meet other LGBTQ people at the company and have a conversation with them. I am a cis heterosexual woman. I replied saying that while I'd love to join them as an ally, there had been some kind of miscommunication as I'm not LGBTQ. I got a quick response without apologizing, saying that my name had been passed on to them as a new transgender employee. The only time I've discussed sexuality has been on the anonymous equal opportunities form that I submitted alongside my initial application, which stated that I was straight and cis. A couple of hours after that, I get called to an emergency meeting with Susan. When I entered the call, she practically screamed at me that I'd misled her. I asked her how, and she said that she and the entire hiring team had assumed I was trans because of the fact that I put my pronouns in my email signature. If anything, I do this because it will make whoever I'm communicating with feel sure in the pronouns that I use and save them from having to ask, which is something that I believe should be commonplace, but that's just me. I reiterated this to Susan and said that I've never tried to mislead anyone. She said that she'd only seen trans people feel the need to mention their pronouns before, and that when my face appeared on the Zoom interview, it could have realistically been a trans woman, so she continued on with her assumption. She also hinted at the fact that my supposed gender identity had resulted in a big swing in my favor over other candidates, and some of the hiring team now feel like I should be let go, as I wasn't the best applicant on skill alone. I've double-checked since, and while the company can fire me without cause for the next year or so, since the protected category sex has been identified as a potential factor, I'd have recourse to challenge them on that if they were to terminate my contract on the very next future. Because while you can't fire someone based on their gender identity, you also can't hire someone solely based on your perception of it either. She ended the call by saying that this wouldn't be going any further right now, but on behalf of the trans employees at the company, she was very offended at my, quote, choices. I'm not going to ask about if I should stay in the job, not the right sub, and I also barely have to talk to Susan now, so hopefully the drama will just die down. But was I wrong for immediately presenting myself in a way that could lead someone to assume that I was trans? Not the jerk. Anyone can use pronouns in their email signature. I teach physics at a university, and I and many of my colleagues include pronouns in our email signatures, for reasons like the ones OP mentions in her post. From what I've seen, it's becoming the norm in parts of academia. Also, there is no one way that trans people look because, surprise, surprise, there are lots of variations in the human form. It's weird and invasive for the company to try to suss out their employees' gender identities like this, and the company is 100% in the wrong. Our next story is, am I the jerk for changing my last name when I got married? And let me just say, that's a pretty cool username there. Although, to be fair, Meowth really is the best, so, you know. I'm a 32-year-old male, and I married my wife around 3 years ago. When we knew we wanted to get married, we discussed what our last names would be. I always assumed my wife would take mine, but when she said she didn't want to, it was heartbreaking, but it wasn't a deal breaker. After a lot of talks and thinking of our options, and especially when it came to future kids, we compromised and decided that as partners, we would go through this together, and so we chose a new last name that both of us would change to. We thought this was a healthy compromise that made us both feel better, as she felt we were equals, and I get what I wanted, which was a family having all the same last name. When we told our families, however, we got mixed results. Most of my wife's side thought it was a good idea, but my family was split. My sisters and their significant others said, "Do what makes you happy," and continued to speak to me. My parents were hurt at first and took quite a while to come around, and we are back to being in good speaking terms. Is our relationship the same? No, but it's at least healing, and we have moved past it now that we have our first kid, and I want them in his life. The issue lies with my older brother. He hasn't spoken to me since the day we told him. He feels I disrespected our father, and it's unforgivable. I know the only person this truly affected besides myself was my dad, and I have to live with that guilt of hurting him, but that relationship still exists and is continuously healing. We are technically half-siblings who share the same father, and in the past he has done many things that I've never agreed with. I've never once spoken ill of him or his choices, even if I disagree and don't like how he has chosen to live closer to his bio mom and hardly ever visits our parents anymore with his kids. The other person who doesn't speak to me anymore is my grandmother, my dad's mom. I called her to tell her we were pregnant, and she went off on me how I was a horrible grandson and how I hurt her son, and that I would regret this later in life and more stuff I've forgotten, and ended saying, "I hope you have a good life." I responded, "Okay," and hung up. I don't mind admitting that I cried after the phone call for longer than I should. My wife sometimes feels guilty about making me, but I reassure her that I'm happy with our life, and it was our choice to change it, and it was their choice not to be in our lives anymore. But I do wonder if I was the jerk to change it and cause issues in the family. My mom wishes my brother and I would reconcile, but I have nothing to apologize for, but wonder if I should help to heal the family. I might have considered it years ago, but after my son was born, my brother never congratulated me, and now I'm annoyed at him after everything I've done for him. It makes me mad sometimes. So Reddit, am I the jerk for being selfish and changing my name? Nope, OP is not the jerk. Your last name is yours, and you can do with it as you please. Men's last names aren't inherently more meaningful. We all get them in the same way. If you can accept women who make the choice to change their last names, then you should be able to accept anyone who makes that choice, and the same thing for keeping names. Content warning on this last one, it involves stalking. Our final story today is, am I the jerk for inviting my sister's ex to my wedding and not her? I'm getting married to my fiancé Brad whenever things get less hectic. We have everything planned out, including who's coming, which has been very controversial. My sister Leah used to date Brad's older brother Mike. She broke up with him because Mike cheated on her. Mike became a bit of a stalker and did things, and she got a restraining order against him. I was angry at Mike, but when I went to university, his brother was in my class and we fell in love. Anyway, when we were discussing who should come, my fiancé said he wanted his brother. Brad said it's because he's very close with Mike, and also Mike saved his life. Brad wants Mike to be there to see him progress even further in life. Brad teared up a bit, he isn't an emotional guy, and said he's sorry but he's choosing Mike over Leah. I'm very close with Leah, but Brad is my future husband, so he kind of takes priority. I told Leah the bad news, thinking she would understand because she's still going dress shopping with me, and she said I was no longer welcome in her home or to see my niece. Am I the jerk? Yes, you're the jerk. Did you somehow miss the part where you wrote that your sister had to get a restraining order against this dude due to him stalking her? They don't hand out restraining orders like candy, you know. Mike sounds like a garbage human being, and the fact that you and Brad would even entertain the thought of inviting him over her speaks volumes about your character. Your sister is the victim here, not Mike. I'd recommend reconsidering the whole marrying Brad thing too, because he's going to be prioritizing Mike over Leah for the rest of your lives. Also, this feels like the perfect opportunity to note that due to our current situation, domestic violence shelters and organizations are facing an uptick in requests for assistance. If you're considering doing some holiday giving, please consider your local anti-domestic violence organizations. I'm including links in the description box to my local anti-domestic violence organization, Partners for Peace, as well as to some national organizations, in case any of you are interested in donating. And if you or a loved one is experiencing domestic violence, check out those links. There are folks who can help you. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, consider giving it a like or letting me know in the comments. I post new videos twice a week, funny or outrageous ones on Wednesdays and spooky ones on Sundays. Thanks for watching, and have a great day. Oh, I forgot to do it with my final thought slide. Alright, let's try this again.